The stark truth is that global wildlife populations have declined by 73% since 1970. And with our coalition representing many of the world's biggest travel and tech companies, we are uniquely positioned to drive the change.
Did you notice that a certain Prince Harry flew from LA all the way to Shanghai to apparently promote greener travel?
In
Would you believe
balloon,
it?
or did he fly in an aeroplane?
I think it was a jet, don't you, Tom?
Right, OK. Well,
There's
Prince
a lot
Harry,
of hot air, though, isn't there?
He's made this surprise visit to China to give a speech.
What on earth is Prince Harry doing in China, of all places? It doesn't seem right. Royals, diplomats, UK politicians avoid China. Why is he there?
Well, this was interesting because it came at the exact same time as King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived in Canada.
At the Envision 2025 summit, Prince Harry faced an unexpected and awkward reception, as attendees not only ignored him, but began to walk out during his speech. It seems that this time his royal charm failed to resonate. The Envision 2025 summit was billed as a pivotal event of the year, gathering political heavyweights, tech visionaries, economic masterminds, and environmental advocates under one roof. The mission was clear: to craft a blueprint for the future, blending cutting-edge technology with sustainable growth in a world still grappling with the aftermath of COVID-19. The guest list read like a who's who of global influence, featuring top-tier Chinese officials, Fortune 500 CEOs, AI experts, sharp economists, and leading environmentalists. Each speech was anticipated to deliver hard-hitting data, bold initiatives, and strategic moves to guide the next decade. However, just as the summit seemed poised for serious business, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when Prince Harry entered the room, transforming the highbrow event into something far more unexpected. Did you notice that Prince Harry flew all the way from Los Angeles to Shanghai to promote greener travel? Or did he take a jet? It seems he made a surprise visit to China to deliver a speech that was anything but memorable. When he stepped up to the podium, the audience leaned in, curious and perhaps hopeful. After all, a royal voice at a high-stakes global summit had potential. But what followed was not the policy-driven powerhouse address many had anticipated. Instead, it was an emotional detour that left delegates blinking in confusion. Harry delved into two unexpected themes: emotional well-being and climate trauma. While these topics are important in humanitarian circles or charity fundraisers, they felt out of place at the Envision 2025 summit, which was focused on data-driven solutions for global recovery and sustainable infrastructure.
Did you notice that a certain Prince Harry flew from LA all the way to Shanghai to apparently promote greener travel?
In
Would you believe
balloon,
it?
or did he fly in an aeroplane?
I think it was a jet, don't you, Tom?
Right, OK. Well,
There's
Prince
a lot of
Harry,
hot air, though, isn't there?
he's made this surprise visit to China to give a speech.
His passionate delivery, though raw and vulnerable, landed with the grace of a piano dropped from a balcony. He spoke about the psychological toll of environmental disasters and urged world leaders to prioritize mental healing in a fractured world. However, this heartfelt message was wildly out of sync with the audience's expectations, lacking statistics, case studies, or any mention of trade policy or innovation frameworks. The question on everyone's mind was, what on earth is Prince Harry doing in China? Royals, diplomats, and UK politicians typically avoid China, so his presence raised eyebrows. Interestingly, this visit coincided with King Charles and Queen Camilla's arrival in Canada, leading one delegate to scoff. It felt less like a keynote and more like a heartfelt diary entry. Wrong place, wrong audience. Another likened it to a TED Talk, but without the inspiration, just confusion.
UK politicians avoid China. Why is he there?
Well, this was interesting because it came at the exact same time as King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived in Canada.
In a room filled with leaders ready to debate digital currencies and decarbonisation models, Harry's speech sounded more like a wellness podcast monologue, full of heart but devoid of a blueprint. What was meant to be a high-profile keynote quickly spiraled into a royal miscalculation, and the audience didn't stick around to pretend otherwise. Insiders at the summit revealed what many had already sensed. Harry's speech was wildly out of step with the event's core mission. Delegates had flown in from every continent expecting hard-hitting insights on AI, green infrastructure, and strategic trade alliances. Instead, they were treated to what one delegate described as a self-help podcast in a palace suit. The stark reality is that global wildlife populations have declined by 73% since 1970. And with the coalition representing many of the world's biggest travel and tech companies, they are uniquely positioned to drive change. It didn't take long for murmurs to start. A Chinese business titan was overheard scoffing, "This was a trauma lecture disguised as policy." Another Southeast Asian economist described Harry's delivery as sincere but stunningly tone-deaf, accusing him of moralizing without grasping geopolitical nuances. The glaring omissions were evident. No mention of China's carbon goals, no acknowledgement of regional tech dynamics, and not even a throwaway line about the Belt and Road Initiative in Beijing. By the midpoint of his emotionally charged but strategically barren monologue, delegates began to slip out quietly, one row at a time. By the time he uttered the words, "emotional resilience over economic urgency," entire sections of the room had ghosted him. A silent, powerful protest from leaders who came for solutions, but were handed a lecture instead. It wasn't just a walkout, it was a message. Passion without precision has no place on the world's most pragmatic stage. His speech, part emotional appeal and part climate catharsis, quickly spiraled into what many are now calling an example of international miscalculation.
The stark truth is that global wildlife populations have declined by 73% since 1970. And with our coalition representing many of the world's biggest travel and tech companies, we are uniquely positioned to drive the change.
What Harry framed as a heartfelt plea for emotional resilience was widely seen as tone-deaf and unprepared for the real-world stakes of global diplomacy. In the hours that followed, the fallout was swift and brutal. Global media outlets from London to Singapore zeroed in on the walkout and the awkward aftermath. Headlines ranged from "Prince Harry bombs in Shanghai" to "the wrong speech at the wrong time in the wrong country." Even Western outlets that typically cushion royal blunders struggled to defend this one. A UK editorial cut deep. Harry's heart may be in the right place, but his head clearly wasn't in the room. Social media was ruthless, rapid, and utterly unforgiving. Clips of attendees leaving mid-speech exploded across platforms like wildfire. TikTok was flooded with edits of Harry speaking solemnly as chairs emptied behind him, set to comedic background music. Twitter users piled on with captions like, "When you came for green energy reform but got group therapy instead." Instagram had a field day with side-by-side memes. One panel showing Harry's hopeful opening smile, and the next his stunned face as the room thinned out, captioned, "When you realise you're not the main character anymore." As the global backlash exploded, the royal family's reaction was radio silence. Not a single word from Buckingham Palace, no tweets, no statements, no public show of support from any senior royal. The silence wasn't just loud, it was a flashing neon sign saying, "We're done."
What on earth is Prince Harry doing in China, of all places? It doesn't seem right. Royals, diplomats, UK politicians avoid China. Why is he there?
Well, this was interesting because it came at the exact same time as King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived in Canada. So
Insiders and royal watchers are clear about what this means. Harry's solo spotlight is fast becoming a liability, a headache the monarchy can't afford. Meanwhile, King Charles and Queen Camilla were busy commanding headlines on a high-stakes diplomatic mission to Canada, diving into serious talks about sovereignty and international relations. The contrast couldn't be more glaring. While King Charles was shaping the future of the Crown's global influence, Harry's China escapade was spiralling into a meme fest and diplomatic cringe. The Crown's image was being carefully polished on one side of the world, while on the other, Harry was practically being escorted off stage in frustration. The message is clear. The family isn't just distancing itself. They're sending a signal that this isn't the kind of royal spotlight they want anymore. The timing was impossible to ignore. While King Charles was busy playing the heavyweight diplomat, stabilising international relations and making headlines, Prince Harry was on the sidelines delivering a feel-good speech to a half-empty room. The contrast was brutal. Media outlets and royal watchers alike weren't shy about calling it. Was Harry trying to steal the spotlight? Was this trip a thinly veiled power play to outshine his father? If that was the plan, it crashed and burned spectacularly. What was meant to signal independence and influence came off as a desperate, clumsy grab for attention, completely lacking the backing of any real diplomatic weight or strategy. In trying to go head-to-head with the crown, Harry only reminded the world that he's still playing catch-up. If there's one thing that stands out from Prince Harry's disastrous trip to China, it's the glaring lack of tangible outcomes. The whole affair was a swing and a miss, a spectacle with no substance, a headline without the follow-through. In the world of international diplomacy, outcomes matter. True state visits are meticulously planned affairs, often months in the making, where high-level discussions and strategic meetings shape the direction of global relationships.
UK politicians avoid China. Why is he there?
Well, this was interesting because it came at the exact same time as King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived in Canada. So
Agreements are made, frameworks are solidified, and policies are debated. Think of the high-stakes trips taken by Harry's father, King Charles, or other world leaders. Each visit is part of a broader, carefully orchestrated strategy to advance national interests and secure policy wins. Now contrast that with Harry's so-called diplomatic trip. This wasn't a carefully coordinated mission. There were no bilateral meetings, no meaningful policy briefings, no formal connection to the UK government, and most crucially, no policy outcomes. The absence of tangible agreements, initiatives, or even a single signed memorandum of understanding told the story loud and clear. This wasn't about diplomacy. It was a PR stunt wrapped in an empty package. Without the backing of the UK government or international agencies, the entire trip seemed less like an international mission and more like an Instagram moment. One speech here, a photo op there, and a desperate hope that something would stick. The problem? Nothing did. The trip didn't have the gravitas of a state visit. It didn't even have the weight of a credible international forum. Instead of contributing to global dialogues or solving real-world problems, Harry's appearance became little more than a self-serving moment in the spotlight, destined to fizzle out as soon as the cameras turned off. In the world of international affairs, actions speak louder than words.
No single company can tackle these issues alone. And given the headwinds we face as a global community, we must work together to drive meaningful progress. Now is...
And when the actions lack substance, the words quickly become irrelevant. Harry's attempt to position himself as a global thought leader fell flat. He was a man with big ideas, but no platform to deliver them. Where was the collaboration with international environmental organisations? Where were the partnerships forged with local governments or trade organisations? Where were the actionable solutions to the world's most pressing problems? If the trip was meant to position Harry as a credible global influencer, it missed the mark spectacularly. Instead of shaping policy or fostering meaningful relationships, the trip served only to underscore his isolation in the diplomatic world. It wasn't just a failure of substance, it was a failure of vision. In his attempt to assert himself as a thought leader on the world stage, Harry found himself without the necessary backing to make any real impact. The reality is that his presence did little more than fill space. He had no weight to carry, no powerful allies to lend credibility, and most importantly, no results to show for it. The real irony? Harry's trip seemed designed to project independence, to show that he could step out of the royal shadow and command the global stage on his own. But instead of elevating his profile as a diplomatic figure, it exposed the hollow nature of his current endeavours. He wasn't a kingmaker or a policy shaper. He was just another celebrity hoping to cash in on a fleeting moment. And that's perhaps the most damning indictment of the whole affair. What was meant to be a high-profile diplomatic mission backed by years of royal experience and an array of noble causes turned into a spectacle that achieved absolutely nothing. A speech was given, a few photos snapped, and
Did you notice that a certain Prince Harry flew from LA all the way to Shanghai to apparently promote greener travel?
In
Would
hot
you
air
believe
balloon,
it?
or did he fly in an aeroplane?
I think it was a jet, don't you, Tom?
Right, okay. Well,
There's
Prince
a lot
Harry,
of hot air, though, isn't there?
he's made this surprise visit to China to give a speech.
that was it. The absence of meaningful policy outcomes was deafening. In a world where global power dynamics are shifting by the minute, where the future of the planet hinges on decisive action, Harry's trip was a missed opportunity. A reminder that the road to true international influence requires more than just a high-profile speech. It demands substance, connections, and most importantly, results. And Harry's trip had none of those. What's more concerning than the lack of policy outcomes, however, is the growing realization that Harry's place in international diplomacy might be more about headline chasing than real change-making. Prince Harry's loud and proud crusade for sustainable travel hits a sour note when stacked against the reality of his jet-fueled escapades. Talk about biting the hand that feeds your cause. His carbon-heavy lifestyle doesn't just look bad, it undermines the entire climate movement. This isn't just a personal slip-up, it's a full-on credibility disaster that fuels public skepticism and stalls real progress. Harry's private jets and first-class flights from Los Angeles to China scream excess, the very excess his speeches claim to fight. Each flight burns through more emissions than dozens of economy seats combined, making his climate credentials look like little more than a PR stunt. And Harry isn't alone. The green hypocrisy epidemic is sweeping through celebrity circles worldwide. Glamorous influencers preach eco-love by day and hop on private planes by night. Harry's high-flying carbon footprint only adds fuel to that fire, exposing a glaring contradiction that's hard to ignore. In activism, hypocrisy is a poison that kills credibility faster than any scandal. When the public spots a glaring disconnect between what you preach and how you live, suspicion quickly turns into cynicism, and suddenly your important message gets drowned out by doubt. For Prince Harry, this backlash cuts even deeper. He has cast himself as a global voice on climate action and mental well-being, a figure people look to for genuine leadership. But when his carbon-heavy travel habits come into the spotlight, that image crumbles. His audience expects him to walk the talk, not jet-set around the world, leaving a giant carbon footprint behind. The worst part:
No single company can tackle these issues alone. And given the headwinds we face as a global community, we must work together to drive meaningful progress. Now is the moment for the industry to reaffirm its commitment to being a force for good. Challenges will undoubtedly rise.
Without owning up to these contradictions, Harry's climate crusade risks being written off as little more than empty virtue signalling, a performance for the cameras with no real substance behind it. And once public trust is lost, it's almost impossible to regain. Prince Harry's Travelist initiative is facing heat for looking more like a flashy luxury brand than a genuine green movement. Sustainable travel is supposed to mean cutting carbon footprints, uplifting local communities, and protecting fragile ecosystems. But when your flagship project rides shotgun with frequent long-haul flights fueled by fossil fuels, the message gets lost in the smog. Critics aren't buying the glossy packaging. They see Travelist as a high-end lifestyle club selling the idea of eco-friendly travel to the elite. A curated fantasy of green living that's more about status than substance. Instead of tackling the hard truths about emissions and accessibility, it risks turning sustainability into just another pricey commodity. In other words, travel's green image may be little more than smoke and mirrors. A classic case of style over real, measurable impact. Prince Harry's alleged backstage meltdown after his poorly received speech hints at a deeper, more troubling pattern, an unwillingness to face uncomfortable truths. When the criticism hits too close to home, does the conversation stop? If so, what does that say about the strength of the message? Refusing to engage with valid concerns especially around something as critical as climate hypocrisy, doesn't just hurt personal credibility, it weakens the entire movement. Climate activism demands transparency, humility, and a willingness to listen even when it's uncomfortable. If Harry truly wants to lead the charge on sustainability, shouldn't he start by walking the talk and addressing the criticisms head-on? The disconnect between his message and actions could undermine the very causes he champions, making it essential for him to align his lifestyle with his advocacy. As the dust settles from his ill-fated speech, the implications for Harry's future endeavours are significant. The royal family may be distancing themselves from his approach, signalling a shift in how they wish to engage with global issues. The contrast between Harry's celebrity-driven narrative and the serious diplomatic efforts of his family highlights the challenges he faces in carving out a meaningful role on the world stage. Moving forward, Harry must navigate the complexities of public perception and the expectations that come with his royal lineage. The path to redemption will require more than just heartfelt speeches. It will demand a commitment to genuine engagement, collaboration with experts, and a willingness to adapt to the realities of international diplomacy. Only then can he hope to regain the trust of both the public and the institutions he seeks to influence. In a world where authenticity is paramount, Harry's journey will be closely watched. The stakes are high, and the lessons learned from this experience could shape his future endeavours. If he can successfully bridge the gap between his ideals and actions, he may yet find a way to contribute meaningfully to the global conversation on sustainability and mental health. However, if he continues down the path of disconnection, he risks becoming a cautionary tale of what happens when good intentions are not backed by substantive action.